So, not continuing with the documentary hypothesis, I called up Delgin at the same time I was supposed to. They're not in today. Why? They're in on Sundays. Why aren't they in today? I don't know. They're not in today. Well, there's the part number. Can you give me the part? Oh, I don't do that. This is just phone answering. Is this an answering service? No. Is it? Anyways. Mythicists. Again, I got somebody who's found something to magically debunk all of Christianity. Alright? Because they read a book that said, was it the Templar Code? No, it wasn't the Templar Code. The Jesus Conspiracy. Some weird thing that it was actually that nobody could have died of crucifixion within like 3 hours or whatever, and people have stayed up crucified for days, and in some cases public humiliation, and they had people taken down if they could survive long enough, and that they put like gall and vinegar on a rag, which you could knock somebody out and fake death with it so that people would think he was dead. And they brought his body down, and he was kind of basically in a coma, and then he could get up and walk away. This is what this message sends me. Again, it's a private message, so I can't say who it's from. Actually, I don't even know if this person's ever left a comment on any of my videos ever. Or it's just somebody under a different name. Jesus was sweating blood in the Garden of Gethsemane. So he knew his death was coming somehow. Because they found recently that people who are under extreme duress, like sinking ships, people who think they're about to die, actually start sweating blood. Their drops of sweat actually turn to blood. They contain blood in them. So he's stressed out. He's getting pulled around to different places. Because everybody's like, no, this is Jerusalem is swelled because it's the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. It's Pesach, Pascha, Passover. So he's getting jacked around between all these people. Then he gets caned. And then he gets beat with the flagellum, which is this whip. But it's not a normal whip. I may be using the medieval term. Flagrum. Well, let me just describe it to you. It doesn't matter what the technical word is for it. It's basically a knotted rope of leather straps that is frayed at the end, but frayed very long. You got these little barbell-shaped things on the back of them, or on the ends of them, and other pieces of metal. And they they almost flay him. Basically, they're coming pretty close to skinning him alive with it, just whipping the hell out of him. You know, painful, humiliating, making a mockery of him. They, you know, they put on pageantry. Oh, look, the King of the Jews, and they go to give him a reed and smack him in the face with it, and they crown of thorns, which they actually found the plant. It's not the thorns that's shown in, you know, medieval Roman Catholic art. It's kind of like the sticky plants that you wind up stepping on in the summertime when you're a little kid, but like longer. So just, you know, it's not like piercing, you know, going straight through. Well, some of them probably could, but probably not as gruesome of crown of thorns is what's depicted on medieval crucifixes. But probably a lot more blood. I guess I do have it. I hate The Passion. I didn't like that movie at all. I guess I do have a use for it. The weapon that they used and that beating, pretty accurate for that. The Via Dolorosa is not the path Jesus walked. Archaeologists know this. Because those trees weren't there at the time. And he wouldn't have been carrying a cross. He would have been carrying a beam, the cross beam. That turns it into a cross. The reason why I say this is you have somebody who's been slapped around, punched, slapped, kicked, spit on, caned, and then whipped with some horrifically terrible device, which, you know, when it whips, this mini lead barbell sinks in and then tears out the flesh. So massive blood loss, right? So by the time they actually crucify him, he's so weak he can't even carry whatever part of the cross he's carrying. Who knows? May have been a full cross. Most likely it was probably a cross beam, and they might have nailed it up to already existing poles. They may have even been trees that were, you know, cut, and they would just next people up there. So they have to get this guy, Simon of Cyrene. Actually, I don't think in Mark it actually. I think in Mark it actually does name him. Sorry, it's just kind of off the cuff, just because I'm at least getting delayed of going into work, but I better get this job today, because it's, well, whatever. Enough about that. So they get him up on the cross. They drive nails through his hands, and people say, oh, well, it couldn't have been through the... Again, hand is different back then. The hand would have supported it if you're driving nails through the feet anyways. And it's you're trying to hold yourself up, but you can't. Most likely it's the wrist. And it's very funny that people say, well, it had to be through the wrist, or it couldn't be through the palm. And this just proves, you know, the story. Which, I wonder what those people would say about the Shroud of Turin, since it shows the marks on the hand, and then the feet crossed over with a nail through it. So, at this point you're going to be going in shock, because about 10 years ago they did a this weird, like, you know, weird experience, and there was this creepy, weird, like, little dude wearing like a really like wearing a blouse with like these big cuffs coming out, and he's wearing a suit coat, but it's all blousey, like this white shirt and his cuffs coming out, and he actually went to the Philippines where they crucify people on Good Friday. They only have them up for like an hour or so, and they take them down. It's just symbolic. But he said it was excruciating. It was the worst pain that he could have ever imagined. He couldn't imagine the worst pain. And he's like, yeah, I'm kind of into pain, so I wanted to know what this pain was like. He's like, after that, I guess that's a that's a good cure for being a masochist. It's crucifixion. And they're like, alright, sun's going down, Passover's going to hit, it's a Jewish city, you can't have dead bodies lying around here. So the guys, they break their legs, because that's how you die of crucifixion, is you can't raise yourself up to breathe, right? Jesus is already dead. So what do? They spear him. And it says blood and water come out. So that's also an indicator of how bad he was bruised and bleeding on the inside. So they stab him, basically. I think it even says it pierces heart. I mean, the Romans were experts at killing people. If they made sure somebody's dead, they're dead. Not to mention, if you're people who are in accidents or who are in extreme pain are always thirsty too. People who are losing blood are very thirsty. Whenever I have to do emergency surgery on people, I always say, do not give them water, because the people want water, but because then their body starts to basically go into action again, and then surgeons make it harder for the surgeons to operate on people. But what do? They give them vinegar and gall, I think it is. And he I don't think it was a mighty yell he yelled out with. Where I saw this hokey play years and years ago. It is finished. No, he was probably saying it whatever he could, as loud as he possibly could. And who was by him? The women. The women stuck by him the whole time. At least according to Gospel Mark. It's the women that were there. It's what the Orthodox Church has great respect for Mary Magdalene. And we don't call her a prostitute, although I don't think Gregory the Great, Gregory Dialogus, meant it as a slam against her. And nobody ever says, well, see, Paul, he was a killer, so that's, and a persecutor of Christians, so, that they're trying to say Paul really wasn't a good guy, No, it was just the redemptive factor then. If you look at the time Gregory Dialogus lived, work was down, prostitution was up. So even prostitutes can repent and become saints. Mary of Egypt was a prostitute. But getting back to the story. So they pierce him, and they give him stuff that's actually gonna dehydrate him. And then after a little while later, they pierce him. A lot of blood and fluid comes out. Take him down from the cross. Did he die of crucifixion? Not in the way people normally die of crucifixion. I mean, he probably wound up dying of crucifixion almost immediately. Because he had torn up, his muscles had been torn up by that. I mean, his muscles been torn into by that time. Massive blood loss. On top of getting beaten and bruised, probably having hell knocked out of him. Not literally, probably a bad choice of words. I'm talking about Christ, right? So, when they put him up on the cross, he couldn't last long. There's no way he could have lasted long. And even without being crucified, he might not have survived. So he went through a horrible, torturous death. So he's dead. Nobody disputes that, actually. That's the thing, is that nobody disputes that he died. In the Gospels, they talk about, yeah, they thought, they were saying that the body was stolen, but, it wasn't, and this and that, and, but nobody disputes that Jesus of Nazareth died, and died on a cross. There's no pagan account, there's no other variant Christian account. Well, there's one very, 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 very late account of Jesus laughing at the man dying on the cross, because they said, how do they think they can kill the Christ? I'm not a man of blood. The Christ isn't of blood and flesh and whatever, and he's laughing at, this is a good God, this is God laughing at somebody being tortured to death, or even the image of it. And that's Gnostic and just like 5th, 6th century late. So this idea that, he there's no way he would have died within, 3 hours. I don't even think it took that long for him to die. Maybe if he was real strong, which he probably was, he's tecton, he's basically a worker. It's translated carpenter, but it's probably something more akin to stonemason, building stone. If you're hammering away at stone all day, lifting stone blocks, you're going to have muscle on you. Not only that, but he's walking around all over everywhere. So, he died. I think we can agree. I think even the atheists can agree on that, is that he died. They put this magic potion. It wasn't actually. The Romans were actually the Romans were helping him. The Roman soldiers were under Pontius Pilate, and the Roman prefects were not known to be real jokers and, hey, this and that, and oh, my guys, I told them to kill this guy and they didn't kill him. They were just, kind of joking around. That's fine. No, he would have decimated his army, which is every countdown, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. When you get to 10, number 10, you're it. Now, guys 1 through 9, you kill them. But you know how you kill them? You beat them to death with the handle of the gladius, the Roman short sword. So you have to beat one of your brothers in combat to death. That's how the Romans kept their rank and file, kept everybody in line. So I don't think the Roman soldiers were pulling pranks. Anyways, they were experts at killing people and crucifying people. And remember, taking the Jews was very hard. That's why they were basically giving them the one amenity. You can just worship your own damn God. Okay, fine. pay taxes to Caesar. You don't have to burn incense to him. Just don't start any wars and let us collect taxes. Everywhere else, they had to burn incense to the emperor, show that he was God. Eventually, relations broke down. The temple was destroyed in AD 70. After the Jews revolted in 69, which I think was due to putting an idol in the temple, actually. And then 132, Bar Kokhba started his revolt, and it was put down in 135, and that's when they just totally mowed over everything, and they put up the temple of Saturn on where the temple used to stand, and where the Al-Aqsa Mosque in the Dome of the Rock is now. Also known today as the Noble Sanctuary. And they named it Palestine. Jesus died a brutal death. I don't, the fact you make that a question, or that's a comment, that's something, oh, this disproves Christianity, or this and that. The question isn't whether he died or not, it's whether he stayed dead. So it was, because the women are running to the tomb to anoint his body with, to do funeral rites, and they run away terrified. Funny, the big bad guys didn't stick around. There's actually a reason for that. John the Baptist was executed for basically being an insurrectionist. Jesus was also. If Protestant Bibles, which is most Bibles, most English Bibles, had the Maccabees in their canon, they would know why. They would know what Palm Sunday was about, and why that would have stirred a lot of people up, especially people who didn't want a rebellion happening when the city was 3 to 5 times its normal population. And Passover, when they defeated a foreign enemy that they were enslaved under, and that they gained liberation on that day. Jesus was on a mission to confront the powers that be, and he did. The question is, did he raise? Did he raise from the dead? If you believe Christ died on the cross, and after 3 days he rose from the dead, I would say that makes you a Christian, but hell, there's people who might think he's an alien or something weird like that. But also you have to answer the question that he asked Peter. He asked, who do they say that I am? Some say you're Elijah, some say you're this, some say you're that. But who do you say that I am? He says, you are the Christ. He says, got the answer right. It's Christ, Christos, which is Messiah or Mashiach in Hebrew. is where they got the name Christians from. They got called Christians in Antioch. And this is a very strange story for the Romans to hear. Because for the Romans, they're like, yeah, okay, there's this account of this guy Jesus, and there's a missing body. And he did some wonder-working stuff, which in the ancient world, that wasn't... Magic was an everyday thing. So that didn't really impress anybody. What really struck people is, you know, if this is happening in the Greco-Roman world, you have Egypt right to the south, you have Greece right across the sea, you have Rome, you have Babylon, you have what's going. So he didn't like become powerful and last, you know, like 20 hours on the cross, and heal immediately and raise 50 feet and just start destroying his. This confused the hell out of the Romans. This is like a depressing story. And also, this was the main part that got me the most. But the rambling thing that went on was, you know, most Christians don't even realize the cross was a method of execution. Who? Where? Which Christian? What? No. The reason why people actually wear the cross is the remembrance of his death, the remembrance of the sacrifice that he made. In fact, the Orthodox cross that I got, it's a Russian cross, 3-barred cross. It actually has the spear and the sponge on it. It says, Isi Exi, Jesus Christos. And then, I don't know, well, it's not, well, the Greek one would have Nika. And it actually has skull on the bottom, and that's twofold, because Golgotha, the place of the skull, and of the conquest of death, foreshadowing of that. Death shall be put under his feet, basically. So, no conspiracy theory time. And anyways, that disproves how. Okay, first of all, if you can't even prove that happened, that's a theory, that there's no even, I mean, let's not discount all archaeological, there's not even a mention of it happening, not even, you know, there's this vague thing that comes from 1,000 years after Jesus was crucified that says, oh, he actually took sleeping potion or something, and that's what did it. Or, you know, they were trading in this blowfish thing from Japan, and they got that, and it, you know, caused, you know, paralysis. And even if you took that, if you took something that paralyzed you, and you're on a cross, you effectively do the same thing as the cross is trying to do. It suffocates you, because you need to pull yourself up to breathe. And you finally get exhausted. It's a very horrible, painful, humiliating death. And it was only reserved for the worst of the worst. It was to make an example out of people. Roman citizens were not allowed to be crucified. There's a part in Deuteronomy that said, cursed is the man who hangs on the cross. So it shocked me when I heard. So the Jews, when they heard this, they're like, what the hell? It's been I mean, the Talmud mentions he performed black magic. I mean, if there's any confirmation that he was performing black magic, you go and you read Deuteronomy, cursed is the man that hangs on. God must have cursed him. That just reinforced their negative ideas of him. To his followers were Jews and Gentiles and various other people. They weren't always looking back. The only thing they were probably looking back at was Isaiah 53. Probably amazed at that. But it was his whole ministry. I mean, think of how little we have written about him. The first gospel, just Mark, it tells us who Jesus feels and this and that, you know, almost like somebody was with him or knew him. But I already knew pretty much everything that he said, so why are we going to write all this stuff down? Let's just get the facts down real quick. We don't want this turning into a huge, weird, elaborate legend. Which some say, well, by the time you get to Luke, it turns into that. But then you had Q source, and now this is going off on something very different. But no. I'm going to send you this video, but please, any conspiracy theorists about Christ's death or non-death, or he faked his death, could you read the Gospels before you even comment? Like, oh, I read a book. Did it tell you about him basically? I mean, he's bleeding out. That's how most people die in almost all of the wars that were fought up until the 20th century. Is you're bleeding out. And even still to this day, unless you get a bullet to the head or bullet, boom, right to the heart or through your lungs, you bleed out. That's basically what happened to Jesus. And his ability to hold himself up, bleeding out, and suffocating at the same time. It's a combination of the two, probably. Not to mention shock and his system shutting down. So, I think I did away with that myth pretty good. Did put it to rest. Unless anybody's got any, 2,000-year-old papyrus with Jesus' signature on it, even though we wouldn't know what it looked like, saying, oh, hey, yeah, by the way, that was real cool. I kind of escaped and did this, and I faked my own death, even though putting me in paralysis when I'm up on a cross would be the worst frickin' idea in the world. Not to mention, the Roman centurion speared him. And if you're in the Roman army, you know how to kill people. I mean, you were in there for 25 years. You know how to thrust a killing blow. So that's just... I think I put this one to rest. Leave it up to you guys. Do you think that conspiracy stands, or do you think it just falls flat on its face? And also, to the dude that I'm sending this to. I don't know. You could be a woman. There was somebody on here who I thought was a guy. I thought was a Muslim guy. Turns out to be pantheistic female. Take it easy. Peace to you. May God save Serbia and Syria. Please pray for all those who are mourning a death. Those who are recovering from surgery. Those who need to go in and get major surgery done to them. Those who are near death. Those who are extremely ill. Please pray for those who are persecuted across the world, and especially those who are being persecuted in the Middle East right now. May God save Serbia and Syria from the powers that be. So, not continuing with the documentary hypothesis, I called up Delgin at the same time I was supposed to. They're not in today. Why? They're in on Sundays. Why aren't they in today? I don't know. They're not in today. Well, there's the part number. Can you give me the part? Oh, I don't do that. This is just phone answering. Is this an answering service? No. Is it? Anyways, like gall and vinegar on a rag, which you could knock somebody out and fake death with it so that people would think he was dead. And they brought his body down, and he was kind of basically in a coma, and then he could get up and walk away. This is what this message sends me. Again, it's a private message, so I can't say who it's from. I don't even know if this person's ever left a comment on any of my videos ever. Jerusalem is swelled because it's the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. It's Pesach, Pascha, Passover. So he's getting jacked around between all these people. Then he gets caned. And then he gets beat with the flagellum, which is this whip. But it's not a normal whip. I may be using the medieval term. Flagrum. Well, let me just... Mythicists. Again, I got somebody who's found something to magically debunk all of Christianity. Alright? Because they read a book that said... Was it the Templar Code? No, it wasn't the Templar Code. The Jesus conspiracy. Some weird thing that it was actually... that nobody could have died of crucifixion within like 3 hours or whatever, and people have stayed up crucified for days, and in some cases public humiliation, and they had people taken down if they could survive long enough, and that they put, or it's just somebody under a different name. Jesus was sweating blood in the Garden of Gethsemane. So he knew his death was coming somehow. Because they found recently that people who are under extreme duress, like sinking ships, people who think they're about to die, actually start sweating blood. Their drops of sweat actually turn to blood. They contain blood in them. So he's stressed out. He's getting pulled around to different places because everybody's like, no.